Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Sunday, March 21st, and this is Life Matters. Come on, let's talk about it. Well, hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. I want to thank you for joining me today on Life Matters with Michelle, and I am your host. I am so excited about this opportunity to come into your homes, your cars, your places of employment. Today, we have a very special day. You know, Life Matters is where we talk about what matters in your life, particularly as it relates to the African American community. And today, I want to remind you, if you have comments, if you have questions, to drop them in the chat so that I can field them to our wonderful guests. And I want to thank my friend, my sister, Miss Charvette Shirk Pitt, for joining me today. Say hello to the people, sweetheart.
Hi, everyone, and hello to you, Michelle.
How are you, dear?
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Happy to be here.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We're going to jump right in. Let me introduce this wonderful woman to everybody. She has an extensive bio, but I'm going to try and give you the bulk of who she is. But she is the founder and executive director of the Men Embracing Nonviolence organization. And her passion is to create an organization that would be the voice for men who are victims of domestic violence, which was originated from her occurrences as a victim and perpetrator of domestic violence herself. This is going to be juicy, y'all. Let me tell you. So consequently, her thesis masterpiece in Lincoln University was for the Men organization. And so upon completing her work, she received her Master's of Human Services in May of 2013. She is also a credentialed domestic violence advocate through the National Advocate Credentialing Program in Arlington, Virginia. Coupled with continuous education in the domestic violence arena, she has volunteered at a number of domestic violence organizations in Washington, D.C. and Maryland. She is a court-appointed special advocate for children who may have been abused or neglected in Maryland. I promise you, she's got some good stuff here. She has been honored to serve on the domestic violence subcommittee for the state of Maryland. She's also had the pleasure of serving on several platforms along with her mother to dispel the myths and stigmas of domestic violence. Above all, she values her relationship and her fellowship with God. I know that's right. She is a member of Empowerment Temple in Baltimore, Maryland, and a lifetime member of Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church. She is married to her loving, caring, and sharing husband, Brandon Pitt. Whoop, whoop.
Yay.
She's a newlywed, y'all, so I can say that. She is also the proud mother of Robert Rush III, and she contributes all of her accomplishments to her unwavering, loving, and steadfast mother, Nanny L. Johnson. And she is a powerful woman in her own right. So I want to welcome you once again, my dear sister. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about men embracing nonviolence. So this is one of those subjects we don't talk about very often. Now, I teach domestic violence. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I've written courses on domestic violence, and we have very little information as it relates to men who are victims of domestic violence. So I'm so excited. Charvette, I'm telling you, I'm tapping my feet over here. I'm so excited because people don't want to talk about it. Oh, they don't want to talk about it. So as we delve into this topic, let's talk a little bit about your journey, because you said you started this organization from your own experience. So talk about your journey and then talk about how you parlay that into this organization. So excited.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks again, Michelle, for having me. I am a firm believer of you do not know where you're going unless you can fully embrace where you've come from. So on my journey, I kept hitting roadblocks of insecurities. And someone near and dear to my heart, which is my husband, he identified it. He was like, you have some insecurities going on. So my mother is very transparent. She's very open, and she's always had that open door policy with us to talk to her. So I took my insecurity to my mom. Hey, mom, what's going on? Something's not right now. Although I have, I tried to build men embracing nonviolence. I went to therapy just to make sure that I had everything out, but there still was a piece of the puzzle missing. It was a small piece, but it made a big difference, which was when my mother was pregnant with me, my father did not want me. So actually, domestic violence actually started for me in my mother's womb.
Wow.
Although after I was born, I had several traumatic situations, and at the age of 8, I decided no man is going to beat me. And with that being said, I didn't even realize I turned into a perpetrator. So at age 15, I was full-fledged perpetrator mode by age 15. And so what happened with that is for the next 25 years, I operated in the perpetrator mode, some victim mode, but more so in the perpetrator mode. So when I turned 39, I was laying in the bed and nobody was home. And I heard as clear as day, God, Charvette, enough is enough. And I knew right then and there what exactly he meant. Now, it took a while for me to embrace it because I had to make some adjustments. But God did it. And so after that, I went to Lincoln University, and first day of class was, hey, you have to come up with a project. And I'm like, well, everybody talks about domestic violence. I'm thinking I'm doing something fancy. Let's talk about men. And my first assignment was I had to write a 10-page paper of everything that I remembered as a child. And I grasped because I was like, oh, I'm that woman. That's the first time I really realized at 42, 43 that I was that woman. I was that perpetrator of violence. So that's how Men Embracing Nonviolence was birthed. And I've been doing the work on myself since then, as well as the organization.
Wow. So for those who don't understand the word perpetrator, now I know exactly what that means, because at the hand of my perpetrator, I was beat every day, raped, all those different things. But explain to the novice, if you will, what is a perpetrator and what did that look like from your perspective? So tell us what it is and how were you a perpetrator?
A perpetrator is someone controlling, manipulative, bossy, think they know everything. That's the field that I operate in, and psychological. They play on your intelligence. That's where I operated at the most. My experience when I was a teenager, it looked physical. It was more physical, psychological, emotional. As I got older and I realized ain't nobody putting up with you putting your hands on them, it kind of like changed to more the psychological, the emotional, and all throughout was the sexual. You did what I wanted you to do, you got it. If you didn't do it, then you didn't get it, So it kind of like changed its face as I got older. But pretty much the violence was still, the perpetrator behavior was still there.
That's awesome, because again, we oftentimes, more times than not, 9.999 times out of 10, we know that the woman is the victim, the man is the perpetrator. Now we have same-sex, situations nowadays, but more times than not, the male is typically the perpetrator, the one who does, the various types of violence. So for those who don't know, because, I've covered this before, but it's been months. For those who don't know, give us the types of violence that, one could expect or one wouldn't even, deem as violence. Now, we know most people think violence is the physical. So you just named psychological. So give us some more of what those abusive tactics look like.
Right. The abusive tactics look like, one is sexual, what I say do.
Okay, so she's our guest is saying, she's given us some of those abuse tactics. And so she said, of course, we said physical, but that's always the last one. And then we have, she said sexual, and that one in and of itself speaks for itself. That's when someone, abuses you sexually, they rape you, they molest you. Even in marriages, if you say no, if you told your partner or your spouse that you don't want to do it, then certainly, sexual is a way that your perpetrator can abuse you. So she's giving us a list of some of those actions that can be considered abusive as it relates to domestic violence. So she said physical, and then she said sexual. So give us some more, Charvette. Are you with us? Okay, so again, there are a number of tactics that abusers use. And so today we're talking about female on male violence, which doesn't really differ that much. And so again, you have physical, which is usually the last thing that happens. Charvette was saying sexual, and then she said psychological, you have mental, you have emotional, you also have verbal, and then you have those times when you have financial, and then you have those instances when you have spiritual abuse. And so there are a lot of different tactics that the perpetrator will use in an effort to, to dumb you down, to break you down. So that's typically what domestic violence does. It's a means of breaking you down, breaking down your character, breaking down your defenses, breaking down your esteem, and making you feel as if you you have no other recourse but to do what is asked of you. And so when we talk about domestic violence, we have to remember that it doesn't look the same for everybody, and that domestic violence does not feel the same for everybody. So once again, Charvette was telling us some of the tactics that are used. So tell us again, Charvette, you said sexual, physical.
Yes. One of the tags is sexual abuse. When your spouse withholds sex because you do something that they do not want you to do. Another tag is financial abuse, whereas if you don't do what they want you to do or how they want you to do it. I have experienced that where they withhold money, especially for very important bills, or they play on you psychologically, especially if you have children. I'll take the children from you. I'll do this to the children. I'll do that to the children. Of course, we all know physical abuse, but from in my opinion, the abuse that women more so perpetrate is not always physical. It does get down to that sometimes, but it's more psychological. And the thing with psychological is that it's not easily detected, and you cannot take it to court and say someone psychologically abused me. But women, sometimes we have the power to have men jump through all kind of hoops, which is very psychological, or we say and do mean and nasty things to them. And one of the traits that I see that's kind of trendy in women that are perpetrators, they're very, very mouthy. There's nothing wrong with being outspoken. There's nothing wrong with, sharing your opinion. But when I mean mouthy, that nasty mouth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you hit the nail on the head, and I was saying this when we lost you for a minute there.
Sorry about that.
People always think, no problem. People always think that abuse, the physical aspect happens first. But like I teach in my classes, physical is never the first approach. They break you down mentally, they break you down emotionally, they break you down verbally till they get to the point where they've weakened your state, where then you can succumb to, physical if it gets there. But not all relationships have the physical aspect. Some people have never had hands laid on them. And so I always like to clarify that people always think that you're only abused in a relationship if somebody's slapping you around. Absolutely not. That is the last thing that happens. They got to break you down as a person before they can get to the point where they start hitting you. So we have a question from our audience that says, can men file a domestic violence case against the woman or the wife?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely, he can, and he should. And that's one of the problems in the domestic violence arena, why domestic violence for men is really not funded or taken seriously, because a lot of men do not go and file. So I encourage any man or woman, for that matter, that feels though that they're in a domestic violence situation, to definitely go down to the courts, because I have seen women abuse a man and then she flipped the script and now he's removed from the home and from the children and so on and so forth. So I absolutely encourage anyone that's in a domestic violence situation, if it's safe, to go file.
Absolutely. Because, and speaking about that flipping, what will happen is, she'll be beating on him, and then he'll get sick of it at some point, or he'll try to defend himself, and then he may, instinctively swing at her and hit her, accidentally try to defend himself, and then she'll go and tell them, well, he slapped me, but she doesn't say, well, this is what I've been doing to him for 5 years.
That was me. That was me. I mean, I knew that I could hit you. And if I hit you back then, and if you called the police, I already knew that they're going to believe my story over yours because I'm a female. I knew that.
Yeah. And that's that manipulation.
Yeah, exactly.
Spirit.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so, and the thing about it is, and I'm sure we're going to get into this, a lot of men, they don't self-report. A lot of women don't self-report, but men are even less, likely to self-report. Give us some reasons why they're less likely to self-report.
Men are less likely to self-report, one, because the judicial system has not fully embraced that men are victims of domestic violence. Two, when an officer comes to the home and they see this 6'2" man and this, 5-foot woman, the first thing he think, no way that this is going to happen, that this possibly can happen. Men are afraid of being arrested for something that they did not do. They're afraid to being removed from the home. They're and removed from the family and the children. They're afraid of being called not so nice names because they turn to the police. And lots of times, men, they really don't have a place to go. I mean, nobody is really on the average taking the man, hey, my wife did this to me, or my girlfriend did this to me. Can I come stay with you for a while? That's kind of rare. So, and now you're in a whole nother issue is financially. I mean, who can really move and be responsible for 2 homes? So a lot of men stay.
And that's the same thing with women. Even if they're not responsible for 2 homes, they may be, dependent upon the male whoever the perpetrator is. They may be financially dependent upon that person, or maybe they don't have marketable skills where they can get out there and find their own jobs, or maybe they can't find childcare, or maybe he's threatening, or she is threatening that if you leave and try to get a job, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I always tell my students when I'm teaching my domestic violence crisis class, I always tell them, I said, I was counseling a woman, this was years ago, where she actually, had to stay because every time she even looked like she was going to leave, her husband would rape their 3-year-old daughter in front of her. So I'm like, so you can't judge why somebody stays because you don't know the extent, you don't know the danger, you don't know the depth of what they're dealing with. And so I admonish people who always say, if I was you, I would just leave. You don't know, and you're not them. And so another reason for the men not self-reporting, I find is because of shame and embarrassment. Like you said, he's 6'2", she's 5'1". Who's going to believe that? But when she hits you over the head with a chair, or, she's doing things to your genitalia, or she's doing things that, he's always been told you don't hit a woman.
Exactly.
And so you take it.
Exactly. You're right. You are absolutely right. And to piggyback on that, I had a client that's in law enforcement, and his wife, and he was the only one working, and his wife would abuse him, and he was afraid to report because he was the only one financially that had income, and he felt as though that they would believe her, take his weapon. So he stood there and endured it, and she stabbed him and some more, and he just would not. He wouldn't even go to the hospital to get bandaged up because he knew that they would ask questions and he would have to tell.
I mean, and think about that. Someone in that type of profession, you're the guy with the gun, and I'm not by any way advocating that he use it against her.
Right.
But you're a police officer. Can you imagine being a police officer, going to your men and women in blue and telling them this? They're going to call you a chump. They're going to say that you're weak. They're going to say, we don't want you on the force. I don't want you to be my partner. You can't even defend yourself against a woman. Can you imagine the psychological thing he's going through with that?
Exactly. That's it. Right. Exactly. And you have to go patrol our streets.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you're afraid to go home. So you want to work a double shift.
Yeah.
Wow. And so we have another question from our audience that says, God, there's so many of them. Let me see. So this one says, how do battered men behave differently from battered women? People will be surprised. Can you answer that?
Battered men, they do I'm not going to say they behave differently. They try to mask it. They do try to mask it more. I can honestly say they do try to mask it more. But I think it all depends on both where they are in the violence, because a lot of men don't even really realize sometimes initially that they're even being abused. And sometimes, and I mean, well, I do know that doctors now ask about, hey, why do you have a black eye, or why is this? So men, I think it all depends on where they are in the abuse, whether they're going to really talk about it or not. But for the most part, in my opinion, they're going to mask it the most.
And for me, I believe they do the same thing we do.
Yeah.
We make up excuses. Oh, I tripped. Oh, I fell. My child left the bike in the middle of the floor. And that's a cover-up. It's a protective mechanism, of course. And it's also protecting their reputation. We do the same thing as women. So I really don't think there's much difference other than the fact that they want to shield their manhood.
Exactly.
Being demeaned by other men or people on their job. So it's I don't think there's that much of a difference other than the fact that we will self-report a little bit more than they will. Outside of that, I don't see that there's much of a difference.
No, me either.
So let me I have all of these questions over here. let me ask you a couple of these questions.
Okay.
We know that Men Embracing Nonviolence was birthed out of your experience as a perpetrator. What does M.E.N. do in the community today? What can we see from them today?
Okay, we do platforms as such as this, basically advocacy, just to get the word out that men are victims of domestic violence, because I think that's really the first step to really be in the streets, not physically, not physically beating, but just getting the word out that men are victims of domestic violence. The second thing, we're working with this organization out of Baltimore called 108 Organization. And we are having a masculinity parade in June where we're bringing men from all walks of life out and just, first we're going to have a parade, marching down. I really don't have all the details in Baltimore, but really, it's going to be a plethora of resources for men. And basically, it's a masculinity parade, that men are, guess what, regardless of what they have endured or have not endured, they're still a man. So that's one of the big projects that we've been working on since September. And that's going to come to fruition in June. So if anybody is interested, you can go to 108organization.org for the information. And I will be posting more information on my Facebook page.
So is that the number 108 or is it spelled out ONEEIGHT?
I'm sorry. It's the number 108 organization.org, and that's who we have partnered with.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So we're talking about male victims. For those of you who are just tuning in, we're talking about men victims of domestic violence. Yes, men do get abused by women. They get abused by their same-sex partners as well.
Yes.
We're talking about this in the context of being abused by a woman. And so give us some misconceptions of, male victims of domestic violence.
One of the biggest misconceptions is that men are not victims of domestic violence. That's one of the biggest misconceptions. My second one that holds near and dear to my heart: men need resources just as much as women do.
Yes.
They need resources. And my third one, guess what? Men hurt too. Men hurt too. And you can physically hurt them. You can emotionally hurt them. Guess what? They have feelings too. The same God that made your feelings made theirs too. So those are my three biggest, points that I want to drive home. Men do hurt. Yes, they do. Absolutely. And they cry and all that good stuff.
And here's the thing. Listen up, all you single ladies, or even you married ladies. We're going to drop some knowledge on you right now.
Yes, Jesus.
When we're trying to figure out why your spouse or your partner is responding a particular way, whether they're ill-responsive or they're hyper-responsive or something like that, this might be, a time for you to lovingly delve into their past, because some of them are living with scars that have not been tended to. Some of them are living with wounds that are still bleeding. And they think that getting in a relationship, being sexually active, being a part of a group, or being in a relationship is going to fix it. So ladies, men hurt too. And I think we feel, because we've always been told, and just like men have been told, Charvette, that men don't cry, suck it up.
Exactly.
Put your back up against the wall. They've been given all of these false responses to life that when life really hits them, they don't know how to handle it.
You're absolutely correct. And one of the things that I highlighted early on, just in case for people who just logging on, is that we always say this: I don't want no man that don't have a relationship with his mother. But if you was on here earlier, I said that my first rejection was from my father. So therefore, that's something that we need to take into consideration either. So what did I have to measure a man up to if I didn't have a father? So that's something that men need to ask those kind of questions too. Where's your dad? Do you have a relationship with your dad? Because that could give you a lot of clues to her behavior.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the same with the men. So even though he may be the victim, you got to ask yourself, why is he the victim?
Exactly.
Why did your victim allow you to be the perpetrator? Is it because he didn't have a male role model? Is it because he was a mama's boy? Is it because, he watched his father do it and he didn't want to do the same thing? And so he would much rather shrink from, what's going on and defend himself. So we have, ladies, we have got to delve into the hearts of these men and not be bossy. What's wrong with you? Hands on our hips and all this thing that people do nowadays and necks going. You are not going to win the heart of your man by attacking him or his manhood. Give him space. Like I told my husband, I said, you have a soft place to land. You can tell me anything, not just because I'm a counselor, but because I love you and I cradle your heart. And I think a lot of people, a lot of females don't understand that men need their hearts cradled.
Yes, Jesus.
And massaged.
Yes.
And they need to be asked those important questions where they really have to give an honest answer.
And something that I found out in research, this was in my research, when I did my research around men embracing nonviolence, a lot of the men, or a great number of men that are victims, was abused by their parents or by their mom, or another female in their family.
That is so true.
That's research.
That is so true.
And the clients that I have had, if I talk to them long enough, it goes right back to another woman. Yeah. So you're right.
And oftentimes it goes back to that woman, but the original woman.
Exactly.
Like you said, was mama, because mom is the one who's the nurturer, right? That's what we as girls have been taught. We're the nurturers, right? But the one who's supposed to nurture you, tells you you're worthless, or you remind them of your jacklad
daddy. Yep.
Always say, always talking down to you. Then you start to become used to that behavior and you accept it, and then you become what?
As a victim, or sometimes a perpetrator. Yeah.
Absolutely. Man, this is rich. Let me see. We have a question. Girl, I'm so excited. Let me tell you something. Whew. Okay, one of the questions says, what happens when an abused man has triggers?
The triggers can go either way. That's a very good question, because one of the things that I do tell people, domestic violence, you're not always a victim the whole time. You're not always a perpetrator the whole time. It can go, you can be a perpetrator and a victim in one relationship. So that it can go either way. And that's with women and men. It can go, because what I'm finding, you have women that has come out of domestic violence relationships, awesome, phenomenal, but they are now that bossy, controlling, and I'm not letting nobody tell me what to do, and they just haven't found that balance yet. But you can be a victim and a perpetrator in the same relationship.
Yeah, because you have that fight or flight response.
Yeah.
Like you said, you come out of one relationship, and now the person that you're in the relationship with now takes the brunt of what you experienced. I dealt with that. I was trying to date. I escaped my relationship back about 23 years ago. But it took me about 10 years to even, get my mind right. Not that I wasn't functioning, but if a man's voice sounded a certain way, I was up in arms. Or if a person looked a certain way, I was up in arms. And so you do go in and out of victim and perpetrator, particularly if you don't know where, where those wounds still are. If I can say it that way.
Yeah. That's a very good way of saying it.
And the same thing, if they don't understand the cycle of violence, they don't know when it started. They don't know when it ended. They don't know when, most of them know when the explosion is, but they don't know when the standover phase is. They don't know when, the pursuit phase is. They don't understand what the honeymoon phase. They don't understand any of that when they're in it, because nobody told them as men that this is what you're dealing with. You just think she Cocoa Puffs, but
yeah.
Oh my God. Whoo, Charvette, this is good. We're going to talk after this. All right. Okay. So let me ask you this.
Okay.
Well, you just said how women become abusers. Oftentimes it's because they've been abused. Are there any other reasons that they would become an abuser?
No, I believe one of the ways, which I think I said earlier, and is because when they lack male interaction, and I don't mean male as in intimacy. I mean a father or uncle, someone to really look up for them. Because the truth of the matter is, how can you want and desire something that you have not seen? You haven't seen it. You haven't seen it. So you have nothing to measure. The males, strong males that I had were my brothers. Well, they were the same age as me. So how are they going to tell me what to look for in a male? I didn't have that uncle or, or my father or anything like that. So I believe that's another way, because I was raised around, dominant, assertive, aggressive women. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But again, it didn't bring a balance to my life. You know what I'm saying? So you had that mentality. I don't need no man for nothing. And then, so when he's not doing anything, don't be mad because you said that coming out the gate. I could pay my own bills. I could pay my own rent. I could take out my trash. I don't need a man for nothing. Well, there you have it, So I think that that's another thing, is when she does not have that fatherly figure there, like I did, and you turn all of that into anger and bitterness, and then you start with the behavior.
Absolutely. This is so good. Another question.
Okay.
This one says, why do men keep going back, dating or marrying abusive or aggressive women?
That's an excellent question, honestly, because that's all they know. That's really, because how often do you say men marry women just like their mother? Okay, so if their mother was like that, then the chances are very great that that's what he's going to pick up until he makes that decision. Listen, that was me. I knew what my father did or didn't do. I knew what my mom did or didn't do. I had to make a conscious decision. What do you want to do? Right. So I had to put in the work. I had to work. I mean, I had to go to therapy. I didn't date for 3 years because God was steady, working on me and pouring out the oil, and I was fasting and praying. And even once I started dating, I realized I still had more work to do. We got married, but I mean, I was a handful in the beginning. And he would say often, like, look, sister, if you don't get it together, I'm tired. Because you figure this have been my life. And then now all of a sudden I'm trying to change. It takes a lot of work. So he doesn't know. He goes after what's familiar to him.
Yeah. It's ingrained.
Yeah.
It's as we say, biblically, you go after familiar spirits.
Yeah.
So if she's hosting a familiar spirit, even though you may not know what that is, if it looks familiar, if it quacks like a duck, if it then you lend yourself to that because that's all you know. So just like, again, the flip side, if it was a female, we're dating the same man with a different name,
exactly,
and a different face, but getting the same behavior, but expecting something different. And so I don't think there's much difference, in our responses to some of these things that we deal with when it comes to domestic violence. So let's talk a little bit about let me see, some of the do's and don'ts related to male victims. So say, for instance, one of us, we're both married, so we're not going to do it. Let's just say one of us, we're single. Let's say somebody out there single is dating someone, and he discloses, in confidence, I was in an abusive relationship, and he's opening his heart to her. What should she, as his new partner or spouse or whatever, do or not do as it relates to, a male victim, even though he's come out? What should she do or not do?
I think one of the first things is to listen. And I always tell my spouse, that's my husband, that don't listen with your ears, listen with your heart. Listen, like you said, you cradle your husband's heart. Listen, and do not make any judgment whatsoever. You may ask questions, but make sure even the questions are very minimal, because when you're talking about trauma and you relive it when you talk about it, right?
Absolutely.
And then you always open up, sweetie, I'm not a therapist. But I highly encourage and recommend that you go to someone who's more skilled in this area. We need to really go back to therapy. And that's very important. But listen, and then the other side of that, when y'all get into an argument, don't bring that back up. Don't bring that back up. Don't bring that up unless he or she is ready to talk about it. So that's what I would suggest. Listen with your heart.
Yes. The because we tell that when we do marital counseling, you know, if you don't settle it today, don't bring it up tomorrow.
Exactly.
Don't do that, because that secondary trauma, or that, you know, re-traumatization, as we call it, is real, because what you're going to do is set that person back, and they may shut down. They may not want to talk to you. They may run to some addictive behaviors. And so there are a lot of things that you may find that your spouse or your partner is doing, and you don't understand it. And you're thinking they're being a louse. You're thinking they're being lazy. Oh, you just want to go hang out with the guys, but you don't realize that conversation you all had on Thursday
Exactly
has traumatized him. And he's sitting here on Sunday trying to unpack it.
Exactly.
He's trying to unpack it and deal with it. And because you're not skilled, like you just said, Charvette, because the woman is not skilled in how to bandage him back up.
Exactly.
He's going to keep bleeding, and she's going to be the front end of that. And then it's going to be a tumultuous, you know, relationship back and forth. He's going to be upset. She's going to be hitting. It's just going to be a lot. It's going to be a whole
too much,
lot.
right? I agree. I agree.
I just got exhausted talking.
I know, right? I know, right? Right.
Oh my God. I'm telling you. And people don't get it. And I know you know this. Now, again, I'm a counselor, but at the same time, when I'm finished certain sessions or talking to, I do women mainly, you know, I'm exhausted at the end of it. And I have to really sit down for like 30 minutes to decompress.
Yes. Yes.
Because you're trying to help these people. You're trying to help them help themselves, to pull themselves out of a pit of despair and all of these other emotional things that are going on.
It's like digging. It's like you're digging, because you want them to come up with the answers. You don't want to give it to them. So yeah, it is. It's like you're digging. Yeah.
Exhausting. You hear me?
It is. It is. It is.
Okay, so what are some of the resources and support that you know about men who are victims of domestic violence?
Well, there's an organization called B6 in Baltimore where they have resources for men that are victims of domestic violence. Now, let me say this. Before and during the birthing stages of men embracing nonviolence, I went around to a lot of the big name domestic violence organizations in the metropolitan area, and they had no resources for men. None. So I just went just to sit in. I volunteered, you know, just to get a feel for what's going on or what's not going on. Yeah. And there are no resources that I know of for men. Only thing that there is support groups. And that's one support group that I do know that's vibing and thriving. And the Men Embracing Nonviolence organization is actually putting together a support group where we have like a chat group. But other than that, and if anybody knows of any, please drop it in the comments box, because we definitely need it. And I do have another sister that's in the domestic violence arena, and her name is Fee Gavin. And she's the CEO and founder of what is it? Domestic violence the tags of domestic violence, and she's in the DC area. And she also has support groups for men that are victims of domestic violence, and she also has support groups for women as well. But those are the only ones that I would personally recommend, because like I said, I've been around to a lot of the ones. And when you say something about men, they kind of like just fling it off like, well, it's not that many, so we're not going to worry about it. So,
but they're people. They have a heart,
yeah,
they have a spirit, they have a life that they're trying to navigate. So that is a selfish answer
it
to
is.
someone who has a need. There used to be a group in Virginia for men. I can't remember it right off the top of my head. I should have written it down prior to the show, but I do know that there's a group out in Virginia that at least it used to be one that advocate against, domestic violence, and it's a men's group. And if I find it, I'll send it to you. It's just escaping me right now. I know it's in my file somewhere, but it's vitally important that men understand that they're not alone. No. Yes, we have a lot of groups for women, but I think it's vitally important that men don't feel like they have to die in this. They don't feel like it's a suicide over it because they're afraid if somebody finds out that I'm being beat by my wife or my girlfriend, I'm going to just die of embarrassment. So I may as well kill myself. So we have to really find a way to level the playing field, if you will, to ensure that our men know that they're still men. They're just hurt.
Exactly.
Just like the rest of us. They bleed just like the rest of us.
I agree.
It's just really, it's really, really sad.
It is. It is.
So let me see. I had another question from one of our guests, and they said, it said, wrong one. What are the risk factors of intimate partner homicide for domestic violence victims? So again, we know that women get killed all the time. They don't talk about it, but we know that when they say somebody's been missing and then they find them in another state, more times than not, it's because their perpetrator has hunted them down and killed them. Do you hear of men having been killed as victims of domestic violence? Have you heard tell of that, or is it one of those things that's hidden because men don't report or people don't really lean into the reality?
If I'm not mistaken, just in the DMV within a year, a woman did kill her husband. So yes, women, I don't think they do it as much, or the media kind of like fluff it. But I do believe that women do kill their abusers. Now, I'm not saying at the same rate that men do, but I do believe that it does happen. But I don't have the research to, support my answer, but I believe that it does happen.
Okay, and so let's ask this. Do you believe that men kill their perpetrators? Just like women will take a gun and kill them, and she like on the movie Enough, she did everything she could and she beat him up, and he died at the end, but she wasn't charged. Do men get away with self-defense if they kill their perpetrator who happens to be female?
Again, I don't have research to support that, but I would say no. They will. I would say no. I would say they're not getting away with it. I mean, especially if they look like you and I, definitely they're not getting away with it.
And more, and I was going to say, if you look at the racial burden here, they will more than likely say, well, you were probably abusing her and you killed her because of XYZ, you have anger management issues.
Exactly.
But little do they know that he was the one who was being abused, and he got sick of it. Not, again, not advocating for it, not condoning it, but standing in the reality of him saying, I'm sick and tired of being, abused by this female. So, I think it's important for people to understand that the same thing that happens when a man is abusing a woman is likely to happen if a woman is abusing a man.
Exactly.
I don't think there's much of a difference. I mean, what do you think?
No, I really don't think that. I think the only difference in the two, in my opinion, domestic violence is 50-50. I know a lot of people would argue me down, but in my opinion, it's 50-50. I think the only thing that men do differently, they do not report it as much.
Yeah,
that's the major difference. But I do believe is 50-50. Just look at it on TV. We laugh, we joke, but just look at one of Tyler Perry's first movies. What do you think that was? Although he cheated on her, yeah, he did. Okay, but what did she do? She abused him, and we he ha ha and all that, because that's kind of like the norm,
Yeah.
So yes, it does happen 50-50, but as soon as we see it vice versa, he hit her. Well, and again, I'm not saying either one of them is right, but we see it all the time, but our responses are different.
Absolutely, because we're locked into a stereotypical mindset.
Exactly.
Right? And
exactly.
So it's sad enough, and again, men don't get abused as often as women, but the fact that they still do, we should not undervalue or devalue their experience because they're men.
Exactly.
So this has been amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been talking to the one, the only Charvette Shirk Pitt, and we've been talking about men embracing non-violence. If you want to learn more, if you want to talk to her offline, if you want to, talk about volunteering or anything like that, please email her at info@MENEMBRACING NON-VIOLENCE.org. That is info@menembracing-non-violence.org. You can also visit her on Facebook at Men Embracing Non-Violence, or IG at Men Embracing Non-Violence, no hyphen, and Twitter as the same. Let me tell you, this is amazing, amazing. Charvette, you are doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
I said, we're going to chit chat after this show because I have some questions that I want to ask you, one advocate to the other.
Awesome.
But this has been amazing, and I'm so excited for the work that you're doing. I bless God for you leaning into this, because everybody can't do it. Everybody is not so much that they're not equipped, they're not passionate.
No.
About it. And what makes it more realistic for you is the fact that you were the abuser.
Yeah.
And so now you understand it. And so now you have that inside track, if you will,
right.
To seeing how a man responds and how he, basically deals with it or lives with it. So this has been an amazing time. I want to thank you, my dear, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. It has been a blessing. It's been a blessing. For those of you who want to watch the replay, please visit my YouTube channel at Life Matters with Michele TV Official. You can watch this at any time, the replay on YouTube, Life Matters with Michele TV Official. And you can like, share, and certainly subscribe. You can also listen to the replay on the radio every Friday at 4:00 p.m. at www.sensationalsoundsradio.net. So we're everywhere. You can watch us on Facebook. You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen to us on sensationalsoundsradio.net.
That's good.
Any show you want to find, you can find it. Okay,
That's good.
Don't say you can't find us. Again, don't forget to like, share, and to subscribe. Thank you again, my sweetheart, for coming on and for sharing your story. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, I am booking for August. We'll be in season 3 then, but I'm booking for August. And if you have any subject that you would like to talk about that really, has to do with the African-American community, send me an email. Michele at IAM-MIJ selfreport.com/contact-us. And I would love to have you on the show. And ladies, again, I'm looking for my beautiful, bald, and bold women. I'm trying to do a segment on us ladies who have no hair because I want to talk about it. Because it matters to me what matters to you. Amen. So once again, thank you, Charvette, Shirk, Pitt. I love you so very much. I love what you're doing. Thank you, everybody, for joining me, for watching, for listening, for tuning in. This has been Life Matters with Michele. I am Michele Irby Johnson. I am your host. I'm talking about what matters to you. So let's talk about it again next time. But until then, have a blessed day.
Awesome.